Good morning and welcome to episode 5 of SME Unplugged 100 Go Digital series, brought to you by MDEC and WordLabs Business Network with me, Bali Dylan, your online MC. Before we begin, on behalf of MDEC and WordLabs, Selamat Hari Raya to my Muslim friends, and to everyone in general, I pray that you and your families are safe at all times. We will get through this together. Episode 5. Next week, episode 6 will be our last series. I have a little bit of sentimental, I'm being a little emotional because this is such a great journey. But, you know, because this journey have not only brought me back to my kind of gig, you know, but also educated me on digital transformation, digital marketing, ways in managing your cash flows, and how e-commerce can help you in boosting your sales as well. And today, in episode number 5, we will be discussing on how to manage your talent over the next 12 months. But before we actually get into more of that, what is the SME Unplugged 100 Go Digital? In tandem with 100 Go Digital initiative by Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, or better known as MDEC, together with WordLabs Business Network, are currently hosting, this is episode number 5, a series of essential discussions for SMEs to evolve and rebound during and post COVID-19 situation. Now, let me quickly give you an introduction on MDEC and WordLab Business Network before we proceed to our welcoming remark. Established in 1996, MDEC is the government's response to the new concept of digital economy. MDEC continues its roles to organize and lead Malaysia's digital economy forward. MDEC launched an initiative called 100 Go Digital. Now, what is 100 Go Digital all about? It is to enable traditional Malaysian businesses to, in key sectors, in moving into digitalization. To get more knowledge, updates, and events, SMEs can register and be part of the 100 Go Digital community. You can first and foremost log in through your Facebook and search this group called 100 Go Digital, and you will be approved immediately, and you can get all the details over there. And you also have SME Quick Wins by MDEC, works with technology solution providers to offer their technology on pro bono basis or at a discounted rate to SMEs. Also working with PSN and SME Bank to provide digitalization grant up to 5,000 ringgit. To know more, the links will be posted on the comment section, at the site. WordLabs Business Network, or better known as WBN, its function is to assist business organizations to adapt and grow in an increasingly uncertain and volatile world. The outfit looks into subjects of globalization and digital transformation through content development across multiple media platforms and events. Now, before we move on, I need to actually remind everyone the housekeeping notes, just like how we always used to do that before when we have live sessions or live events. To all participants, if you have any questions during the presentation or during the panel discussion, please type them up into the question box in the Q&A tab. I'll bring them up at the end of segments. If time permits, we'll answer a couple of them which are important or have already been liked a couple of times. To those who we cannot cover during the segments, we will actually answer that during the Q&A tab, or basically just type them out and reply them on the chat box. There'll be 2 polls, one in the midsection at the end as well. We'll have 2 poll segments, and your attention, which means that your attention, your experience, your knowledge, and your feedback are vital in improving our work. Also, a friendly request, this series is designed to generate ideas. So let's not use this platform to spam the chat with content which is not relevant. So let's all focus on the session today. So without wasting any more time, episode number 5 of SME Unplugged 100 Go Digital begins with welcoming remark by founder and CEO of WordLabs Business Network, Mr. Sridharan Palasamy.
Morning, Bali. You can hear me, Bali?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good morning and welcome to our audience. Thank you for being with us as we reach the penultimate episode of this virtual event series. This is the second last event for the newcomers. The objective of this 6-part SME Unplugged webinar series is to share digital tools, strategic ideas, insights, and of course opportunities, and also present key takeaways to help micro businesses and SME business owners in times of crisis, especially one as unparalleled and unprecedented as COVID-19, right? Rest assured, for those who missed our earlier episodes, do get into our WordLabs Business Network Facebook page or our YouTube channel. So here we are on the 5th event of this series. Here we would like to provide you with the full course of a meal, right? From entree to the dessert of related aspects of business, giving you perspective to take your business forward in these challenging times. So today our entree and main course will be on e-learning and talent management. Well, for dessert, the SME Unplugged Clinic will look into actionable ways of automating your people operation. Learning today is, of course, a whole new ballgame. One, it has shifted from physical to digital. Second, learning in digital era means teaching tomorrow's skill today. And thirdly, with new models, new technologies and designs emerging and converging, we now have to bring learning to the people instead of people to learning, right? So continuous and effective learning is vital, important for upskilling and reskilling of our talent and ensuring relevancy or even future proofing of our workforce. In a time when cash is king, as we shared in part 3 of this series last week, SMEs are, to put it bluntly, struggling to keep their costs low by any means. So having a robust and flexible workforce means knowing not just how, but when to upskill your workforce. So we must ready ourselves to tame the beast that is the technology today, right? Ever-changing and unstoppable. So the first goal is understanding technology to make better choices. So upskilling is absolutely vital, which isn't a matter of teaching ourselves and our people how to use a new device or a new tool like Zoom, the platform that we are using now, which may, of course, may become obsolete or redundant tomorrow. So they need to be equipped with skills of how to think, act, and flourish in a digital environment that is sustainable. So WordLabs is no stranger to this. We have also embraced e-learning and developed our own e-learning platform. Through this, I have personally journeyed with my own colleagues to develop e-learning goals and see what is attained for the benefit of staff, customers, and companies. We will provide you a link on WordLabs e-learning platform in the chat box after this. So that aside, as they say, nothing we do is more important than hiring and developing people. At the end of the day, we bet on people, not on strategies, right? And the challenge now is to how to continually do that with the tools available and the full-on pandemic challenges and new social rules. And back to the event, WordLabs Business Network and MDEC aim and hope to measure the pulse of SMEs in Malaysia and drive content that is transformative, impactful, and encouraging. The knowledge sharing must not end with this end of this broadcast, but discussion must also continue, evolve in order for it to be more effective and reach a bigger audience. As such, please be part of these sessions, actively respond to calls which will come as our MC Bali say later in the webinar, and also survey that will be sent to your emails. Share your thoughts in the chat box. Do not forget to forward questions, and please vote in the question and answer tab. And the data derived from these events was shared earlier at the start of this video. We have also uploaded in our Facebook page of all this data information that we derive from all these polls and surveys, and we will also email these to all registered participants. There are further plans to analyze this data to shape upcoming initiatives, so stay tuned for that. And lastly, we have to remember that talent management today is not merely retrofitting past practices, but it's actually about developing new answers to new problems. So with your presence, speakers and attendees, let's make this an unforgettable one. Stay safe, stay in business, enjoy the sessions. Thank you, and over to you, Bali.
Thank you, Sri. Thank you so much. I think very soon, like he said, we need to look into upskilling and etc. I'm already getting worried because Sri is upskilling himself and speaking better than me. So I'm getting worried right now. But nevertheless, now let's move on to our speaker session for today, presented by Wu Tran, Chief Growth Officer and co-founder at Go1. Go1 is the world's largest marketplace for workplace training, providing customers with ability to access training on almost any topic from workplace compliance training through employee professional development. As Chief Growth Officer, Wu oversees inbound and outbound lead generation, new customer acquisition, and sales, working in close partnership with WordLab Business Network for the Malaysian market as well. All the way from Australia. Wu, take it away.
Good morning, everybody. And first of all, thank you very much to the WordLads team for having me this morning. I'm very excited to be part of this. Just before I dive into the presentation, I guess, yes, hello from very sunny and beautiful Queensland here in Australia. And it's a pleasure to be with you all today. So I'm going to share my presentation at the moment and I will walk through it. There is definitely time for questions towards the end, so please feel free to ask the questions, and I'm sure Bali and I will go through a bit of a Q&A towards the end of it. So please don't be shy. I myself started my first small business with my best friends from high school. The three of us started our first company when we were 16, and we still run this company today together. So from my perspective, small business is the beating heart of any economy, whether it be here in Australia, in Malaysia, or anywhere else in the world. So I'm very excited to be part of this all today. To be able to dive into it, I've been asked to speak about the relevance and reality of e-learning platforms today. But before I dive into it, I'd love to be able to, I guess, share with you all a little bit about myself and a bit about my background. As Bali very kindly introduced, I am one of the co-founders of Go1.com, and we have a very great, strong partnership with WordLabs to be able to bring training content of all kinds to Malaysian businesses. In terms of myself, though, I love learning. I and my best friends who I started this company with, we all have very, very different career paths. Andrew, who is our CEO, is a Rhodes Scholar and an economist. Chris Egland is a lawyer, and my background is actually as a medical doctor. So you think, well, what are these three very, very different people with very different careers, I guess professions, doing running an education technology company? And the answer is very simple. We love learning. We think that learning is one of the most important ways that we can transform businesses, people's lives, and entire economies and worlds as well. So I guess for me, what is it that kind of gets us out of bed in the morning? Well, I like to think about kind of how people learn first. When we talk about learning, I don't mean about skills and qualifications and certificates. I'm talking about that passing on of knowledge. And so let's drive back to about 200,000 years ago to when man first emerged from cave. We learned through story, through passing story from one person through to another. And then if we fast forward to around about, I don't know, say 2,000 years ago, we had a bit of a master and apprentice style of learning where we'd pass knowledge from one person to another and we would more formalize that relationship. And then if we look at today, where we have something that may look very, very familiar to you all, this idea of passing knowledge from one to many. From my perspective, I always think about what the future looks like. And I think it's very simple. It's a real cliche, but we are in that future right now. The emergence of technology and all the things that have come about means that I don't think that much has changed in terms of how we best learn. We've just got more options and more ability to do it than ever before. Because if you think about it, regardless of how we learn, whether it be online or face-to-face, it's really important to understand that learning has a whole bunch of different ways that we can go about doing it, but how we best do it hasn't changed much at all. Why should we even care, I think, is the other question. And I'll share with you why I'm excited about learning. And I'm going to quote Archimedes. Now, please forgive me. The first time he said this, it was probably in Greek. But he said, "Give me a lever and a place to stand, and I shall turn the world." And for me, I believe that education is that lever, and that where we are with technology at the moment, technology is that fulcrum through which we can change the world. So if I tell you what excites me and what gets me out of bed in the morning, it's that I think that learning is going to be the key driver to changing the world at the moment. How does this apply to business? Well, learning is going to be a key driver in terms of driving retention and engagement of staff. And it's something that I, as someone who manages a growing team of a few hundred people, so we're not a large multinational, but we had a growing team since 3 high school friends in a basement to now a few hundred people across 7 offices all over the world. Learning is something that we believe will drive retention and engagement with your workforce. I think, it was said earlier that it is people, it is the human capital in our business that will transform the businesses that we all run. And I think we cannot underestimate the value that learning and the ability to attain skills plays in retaining fantastic staff, engaging them, and upskilling them. And so why should we care about retention and engagement? Well, as a business, I believe that retention and engagement will then go on and drive and power productivity and revenue. At the end of the day, most, if not all of us on this call, work or run a business that is driven towards some sort of outcome or productivity, and most of it will be about revenue as well as a whole bunch of other outcomes as well. So for me, one of the first things that I really want to point out is that I have a belief that learning will drive retention and engagement of fantastic workers and staff that will ultimately power the productivity and monetization or revenue of our businesses. Very often, learning is seen as a cost center within an organization. And what I want to be able to do is to be able to drive that to be a profit center, to be something that adds to the profitability and the revenue of an organization. So if I look at kind of where we're at, I would look at it as a very, very simple concept that I want everyone to kind of walk away with in terms of the power of learning. At the end of the day, if we retain great staff, if we engage workers, whether it be on the factory floor or whether it be in the office, we will have an increased productivity and overall grow a fantastic business. The opposite is also true. Very few organizations have poor retention, poor engagement, and great productivity. So these are the factors that I believe that are important components of human capital that will make a difference to any business, whether you are a small business of 2 or a growing business with thousands. It is important to understand the role of people in our economies, but in the very businesses that we each run as well. I think that we should also acknowledge, I guess, the elephant in the room, which is the impact that COVID-19 is having on businesses. And I guess the impact that has had on learning as well. As Bali shared at the start, we have grown significantly over the last 3 to 4 years. I can tell you that every 1.3 seconds, someone in the world is finishing a training course that we have sourced. So what that tells you is that by the time I finish talking today, around about 1,000 people will have finished learning of some sort by the time we finish this conversation. At the end of the day, COVID-19 has and will continue to change the way we work. Often I hear people talk about going back to the way things were. And my personal belief is that whatever we were experiencing in December of 2019 is not coming back in the future. The world has changed. It has changed monumentally on a number of factors, whether it be the impact of working from home, whether it be the terrible impact on healthcare and the way we go about working, whether it be the impact on travel and the subsequent impact on things like unemployment and impacts on our economies all over the world. COVID-19 has changed that. and it has changed it forever. But I'm not just saying for the worst. It's important to acknowledge that some terrible things have occurred, and the cost of lives and the impact on economies is something that we should not underestimate. But the flip side of it for me is that it's important to understand what it's also caused as well. For us at goon.com, we have noticed a phenomenal change in people's requirements and curiosity when it comes to learning. There was a saying that I was told a very long time ago about the concept of earn or learn. And we're seeing this idea of people, whether they have jobs, whether they're losing jobs, whether they're being furloughed, they are focusing on growing their skills. And that for me gives me a fantastic amount of hope. It tells me that people are driven to get out of this, and they're driven to focus on things that they can control, which is about upskilling and improving themselves to be prepared for the worlds of tomorrow. And if I think about how this applies to an SME, I think it's very simple. I think that small businesses have the ability to adapt much better than their larger peers. But that also means that we need the skills to be able to adapt to this as well. And I think that online learning plays a significant role in evening this playing field. I want to take a step back and I guess think of learning as the consumption of content. Learning has many more complex layers to that, which I am sure many academics will be able to tell you the greater detail of. But I'm a simple person and I'm a learner, not a teacher. If we look at the world and how we consume content today, it has changed on a regular basis. Let's think about how we consume content outside of work. So our day-to-day lives, let's look at things like movies or TV shows. If you rewind to, I don't know, 10 years ago, we would rent DVDs or purchase DVDs or physically buy what we wanted to watch. Then with the advent of things like iTunes, we were able to download and watch. With digitization, we were able to download and watch the movies we wanted. And now today, with a single subscription, with the likes of Netflix or Disney Plus, you're now able to stream almost any movie or TV show you could want in the world. You have access to choice, but it's also on demand when you want it, when you feel like it, when you need it. The parallels that I can give you with books as another example in terms of that ability to be able to go into a bookstore and purchase a book, which I still love doing. You then have the advent of Amazon.com or different book repositories where you're able to go and buy that book and have it ready for you when you want it. And then now with the digitization of books, the likes of Kindle Unlimited, mean much like Netflix, much like Disney Plus, you now have access to the content you wanted on demand for a single subscription. And our firm belief is that learning should be treated no differently. At the end of the day, workers will seek to upskill in their own time, with choice as a key driver. They used to be able to access any form of content or media on demand when they want it, and teaching or learning should be no different. Don't get me wrong, there will be a role for the classroom, but I think we need to understand the technology and the way that we're interacting with technology in our day-to-day lives is going to start influencing the workplace. And so we need to be aware of what these drivers will be to be able to make sure that we can maintain that engagement and productivity and grow the organizations that we're looking to grow. For SMEs, I think it's very important to acknowledge that the digitization of learning and training and the availability of a broader library of training than we've ever had before is a key component in evening the playing field for small businesses versus large enterprise businesses. Today, small businesses can now afford the technology and software that only in the past large businesses could afford. If you think about what's been happening with COVID-19 or coronavirus as an example, the ability to access teleconferencing software or teleconferencing facilities 20 years ago was something that was only available to the corporates. Today, any of us can sign up for a free Zoom account and start running our businesses virtually via teleconferences. So at the end of the day, that accessibility is going to be one of the key things that I think will even the playing field for small businesses versus large businesses. And I believe that the digitization and the accessibility of a broader library of training that was once only available to corporates is now going to be available to small businesses on demand, which will even that playing field between small and large businesses. And for me, most importantly, it's going to even the playing field between the employees who choose to work for a small business over a large business as well. Technology, as I said, will be a key driver of productivity and connectivity. And as a result of that, in a post-COVID-19 world, it is important to make sure that we understand that that technology gets driven from everything from our business practices all the way down to our classrooms that we have when we teach people, through to how we onboard and upskill our staff. I'm also an optimist when it comes to how I view COVID-19. And I do definitely want to share that with you all today. We are seeing an acceleration in many cases of what was already coming. If I acknowledge the terrible things that have come about as a result of what has happened in the last few months, I also want to acknowledge the catalyst it has had for some of the changes that is going to take us quantum leaps forward in terms of how we run our businesses and what we do. In the education setting, and this is outside of the workplace, I can share a story with you about a large university that Andrew went to. It was University of Queensland. It's one of the top 40 universities in the world. And I was speaking to the head of their MBA program, and he said to me, Vu, if you asked any of our administrators across our university, which has tens of thousands of students, how long it would take for our university to go fully digital in 2019, they would have told you 4 to 5 years. The reality was it took them 2 weeks. So when I say that what has happened in the last few months has been a catalyzer in terms of how fast we should adopt technology and change, we knew that universities were going to move online over a period of time over the next few years. And what this has done has accelerated that. I think it's no different to how businesses, workers, and governments are adopting technology as well. I also have a strong belief, though, that out of everything that we are seeing, out of all the trends that we are seeing in terms of the digitization of learning, in terms of how we ourselves individually are interacting with content and what our expectations are in terms of making sure it's on demand and relevant to us, is going to be a key component of seeing what I call the employee-powered learning component of our future. I think that by providing employees with the opportunity to choose and to be able to provide employees with the opportunity to be able to access a broad breadth of learning to upskill themselves will inevitably be an investment into the businesses that they work in. I want to make sure that I leave some time for some questions. So I want to be able to jump into one last thing for me, which is I often get pulled up on face-to-face training. And I want to throw it out there. Face-to-face training is not dead. It will always have a role. As I said right at the start of this presentation, that for over 200,000 years, human beings have learned from other human beings. We have passed knowledge from one person to another. The mediums may have changed, but that role of human interaction is still incredibly important. I mentioned at the start that my background is as a medical doctor, and I still practice from time to time. As a result, I believe none of my patients, nor any of you here on this call, would ever come to see me if I did a purely online medical degree. So face-to-face training will play a vital role now and into the future. The role of online is not to replace face-to-face completely. The role of online learning is to complement it. It is to make face-to-face training higher yield and more efficient. If we think about our face-to-face training practices, is there a way that I can turn a 3-day workshop into one high yield workshop and complement that with self-service and on-demand online training. Not only as businesses will we save money when it comes to facilitators and the repetitive nature of continually paying a person to be able to push out that information, it also means that the information that facilitator, that teacher, that lecturer is providing is the high yield stuff that we can't provide in an online format. So for me, I definitely want to throw it out there. As much as I run a global online training company that is focused on the digital, it is there to complement the analog. It is there to complement the face-to-face. And I have a firm belief that face-to-face training will forever play a role when it comes to training people in our organizations, because people will always play a role. So I'm going to wrap things up and bring it across to questions. But I mentioned before that the future is bright. I'm a firm believer that despite all the tragedy that has occurred, the world will come out of this in a better place eventually. When that occurs, I'm not sure. I'm not the economist, but I believe the future is bright. I think that there will be a greater focus on skills and opportunity to learn than there ever has been before. And I will leave you with my last 3 bits. I think that we should really focus, whether we're in an SME or an enterprise, on providing employees with choice. I think we should acknowledge their requirement for just-in-time and on-demand learning. And I think we should, as employers, as business owners, as workers, we should focus on the fact that skills in the coming century is going to be more important than just simply qualifications and certificates. I thank you all for the opportunity to be able to walk you through, I guess, my world and the way I view the world today. But I'd love to hand it back to Bali to open it up for some Q&A.
Thank you, Vu. Thank you so much. Wait, hang on. Let me just come out. Okay. All right. Vu, you've touched in a very, on a nutshell, when you actually said up through evolution. I really liked your approach when you mentioned about evolution. I think COVID-19, in my opinion, my personal opinion, is that it's just going to be a way where we learn about how to adapt to a new way of living and a new way of life. And you're right about with all the businesses, every single companies out there, they could actually save a whole lot of money because throughout the extensive expense they've been actually investing on face-to-face trainings, face-to-face events and stuff like that. That could actually mean that they would place only for a very important type of event to be held face-to-face, and other than that, which is can be done significantly on virtual platforms, they will actually resort to that. But now the question is, what is the current level, if in your opinion, in your statistic, your research, what is the level of e-learning adoption currently in terms of employer side?
Oh, and I'll share this more broadly, but we're seeing a 3 to 4-fold increase across the regions. And I'm talking globally. We have customers on every single continent on the planet except for Antarctica. And we're seeing a 3 to 4-fold increase in learning. And that learning is very broad. That is from the components of upskilling, so being able to upskill your staff. But also we're seeing a huge demand on learning around things like compliance and workplace health and safety, because coronavirus is changing the way that companies need to operate. So even something simple as hand hygiene and things that are going to be very important to protecting your workforce and your customers, we're seeing people turn to online to be able to do that on a regular basis, because what we're having is we are having that being shared and pushed to employees virtually. If we're all sitting here, most of us are sitting here probably in our houses. This isn't my house. I'm actually in my workplace at the moment. And that ability to push content to your staff virtually is incredibly important. So we're seeing a dramatic increase, and if I can pick a number that gives you an average across the board, we're seeing employers adopt it at a pace of not 10, 20, 30%. We're talking about 2, 3, 400% in terms of not just people adopting it, but people engaging with it as well.
Okay. Now, the next, okay, that question was from Cecilia Fong. Thank you so much. And
Thank you, Cecilia.
The following question is from June Teo, and I think this really applies to my question as well, because the doubt I had is, before COVID-19, networking type of events or collaborative discussions used to be face-to-face, right? So, if you want to have a networking type of event, you basically, host it in a hotel, and, you basically call a whole lot of people, and that's when, you start exchanging cards, you start actually having conversations. But, how can we actually promote networking and collaborative discussions within a digital learning platform? This is by June Teo. Thank you, June. That was a very good, really good question, because I think it's not easy, right? Because let's take an example. If we're taking any platforms at the moment, be it Zoom, be it was it OBR, OBC, or whatever it is, but whatever platforms we have, it's like a conversation between like you, me, and probably the other panel discussion people who are speaking at the moment, but not really interacting, but there's too much of chatting going on. So how do we promote networking and collaborative discussions? That's a very tough one.
I think it's a very tough question, and I want to break it down into some components here for you. I think the first one is around that idea of how do we overcome these barriers to interaction online and virtually. I think the one thing that we need to all understand is that almost every human being on this planet is in the same boat as we are. So I think, if I can be honest, I would love to be there in a room, in a conference hall with you, presenting to you and everyone who's on this call today. But the reality is we can't. And because we're all in the same boat, logging onto this call is the greatest thing we can do to be able to participate and engage. So I think if you understand that every single person in the world you're likely to talk to or want to talk to right now is in the same boat, we are forced to adapt to doing it virtually. And so I don't have an answer as to how we are going to make that work better, but I can tell you that we will. And the reason why is because we all have to. And I think that's the thing. In the past, if you had the choice between attending an online conference versus an in-person one, I think 99 people out of 100 would take the in-person one because of that ability to build a relationship with someone who is in front of you. Today, that is very, very different because we're all in the same boat. We all have to adapt, and we all have to make the most of the opportunities in front of us. So I can't tell you the how, but I can tell you the why, and it's because we're all in it together and because we're all in the same situation. The second component for me, though, and I'm gonna quote Winston Churchill here, where he said, "Never waste a good crisis." And again, I don't want to seem opportunistic when I say this. If I am a small business and I want to sell into global markets like Singapore or Australia or the United States, and I'm based right there in Malaysia where you are, I might have had to previously put boots on the ground and physically be there to sell to those markets. Online interaction is now more acceptable than it was ever before, which means so long as I'm willing to jump on a call at 4 o'clock in the morning, I can sell into the United Kingdom. So for me, I say to every small business out there, if you look at the half full component of what is going on, it's the opportunity to engage with markets you potentially have not engaged with before, because engaging with someone virtually is actually more acceptable than it's ever been before. If that makes sense, Bali.
Okay. So now I think we're going to take the final question, but this final question is going to be, combined with three questions, because all the three questions are particularly in the same area of e-learning. So, there's three questions which talks about e-learning. So, first one is talking about, can e-learning meet SMEs training needs? And then on a businesses which might have different views in investing for training, especially in e-learning during downtime, as they would rather focus on survival mode. So now we're talking about training needs. Can they meet SMEs, the requirements? And also, should they be investing during this downtime, or, Or should they be focusing on survival? And the last one, how can they develop and execute e-learning internally? I mean, internally, having a colleague leading the e-learning for other members of the company is the platform and software would you recommend? So that means now the question is very interesting. So one,
Yes. So
I would say SMEs training requirement, e-learning definitely it could meet the requirement, but then should they be focusing in investing for e-learning or to survive? Or number three, can we develop an internal e-learning platform? Which one would you recommend? Wow.
Okay, so I would start very simple. So for the first one, can e-learning be used to in the SME environment? The answer is 100 times yes, and I'll explain to you why. As I said before, I think it's the great leveler. The digitization of learning evens the playing field between small businesses and large businesses. So because it is provided in a online training format, the cost of facilitators and having L&D managers and HR managers whose sole job it is to upskill your staff and train your staff, through choosing off-the-shelf online learning, you're able to provide turnkey training at a much lower cost. And so therefore, not only is the upfront cost lower, the ongoing capital operational expenditure will be lower as well. So if I can speak very broadly, I think that online training is actually more suited to SMEs than it is to large businesses by the nature of the fact that the headcount required to provide training to people is dramatically less. I do also think, though, that it's not about going completely online or completely face-to-face. It's going to be about having a blended approach to both. But I strongly believe that online learning is actually more suited to SMEs by the nature of that it is a more efficient way to deliver training, it is a cheaper way to deliver training, and it will actually help you in terms of streamlining how you train your staff. Which goes on to the second question of, should I invest in survival versus invest in learning? And the answer is, learning should play some component of your survival, right? Now, I'm not saying, don't aim to survive. You have to survive or else there's no point training people. And I own a business, I run a business, so I definitely acknowledge that. But I think it's important to understand that if we are to adapt to what is happening today, training is going to play a component. Whether it be providing the appropriate compliance training to reduce risk in your organization to make sure that you are able to operate if or when you're able to operate as a business. But I think the second component is that the world is changing. And in order to adapt, you need to make sure that you've developed the skills that you need to be able to survive in that world. Whether it be as something as simple as learning how to use certain technologies, so things like understanding how to use Zoom or Microsoft Teams or a whole bunch of different pieces of technology there, you got to learn how to do that. The second part that I think I'd come back to is just making sure that learning is a component to allow you to adapt to change, and adapting to change is going to be an important component of survival. But if there's a choice between buying training and making sure that you keep the lights on, keep the lights on, right? The last component that was asked there, I think, Bali, was around was around the idea of how do we make sure that we, how do I best articulate it? Bali, do you mind, can you just refresh me? You positioned it very well, as you were saying, with that last question.
The last part was talking about, if SMEs would like to invest and build an internal e-learning platform, are there any software you could recommend?
And that's where what I'm trying to say here is very, very simple. Do not invest in building your own because you're an SME. Engage with someone who knows what they're doing and do it. And I say this unbiasedly. Talk to someone like Word Labs who can actually provide that to you. Because I think the important thing to understand is that as an SME, you're not looking for a giant implementation. You're not looking for a piece of ERP software to deliver training to your staff. You need something like the Word Labs platform that can actually easy to implement, easy to roll out, easy to understand, and it's easy to be able to get up and running today. Because as an SME, you need to spend your time focusing on the most important parts, which is running your business, right? So I say this, I know that I have a bias because Word Labs is a partner, but then that's why I want to bring it back and keep it really simple to you. Choose someone like Word Labs who provides you with something that is out of the box, that is going to make your time more efficient and give you that opportunity to be able to run your business the way you want to.
No, because that's, I think, to wrap up that question, I think that is a very important point, because if I want to learn how to make a bread, I think I will invest more than actually buying the bread myself. So the thing is that, as simple as that. So if you want to actually, build something, rather than actually building, go to people who already have that extensive knowledge, prior to COVID-19 or before COVID-19, they know what they are doing. In fact, like Stack Skills, I use the tool called Stack Skills. So I pay them a price, and then I'm learning a lot of things, how to do monologue,
Yes.
how to use, video conferencing, green screen, etc., which I didn't know at all. So
to keep it simple, don't reinvent the wheel. All right, like
exactly.
Don't reinvent the wheel. You need to be able to make sure that you're as an SME owner or leader, your role is to run your business, and you need to make sure that you focus on that and not get distracted. So as important as learning is, please make sure that you do it the right way as well.
Thank you, Vu. Thank you. And to those who tuned in, if you feel what Vu was saying, and if you really like what he just presented, just give a thumbs up at the chat box section, and then let Vu know that you liked it. So thank you so much. That was Vu Tran, Chief Growth Officer and co-founder at Go1. And before moving to the panel discussion, let's go to poll number 1. Thank you. I see a lot of thumbs up coming on. Thank you. All right, so first poll, we got about 6 to 7 questions. Sorry about that. In the next 6 months, how will your hiring differ from the previous 6 months? What are some of the talent management challenges that you face? How will you mitigate the impact of COVID-19 on your company's workforce and productivity? That's a multiple choice one. What do you think are the benefits of talent management to the company? Do you believe e-learning can meet the training needs of your SME requirement? Is e-learning currently being employed to increase performance and retention? And the final one, what are some of the barriers, constraints faced by SMEs in the adoption of e-learning? I'm going to give you some time to actually put up the question, because there's multiple choice, so I'm going to give you some time to do that. And while you're doing that, I just wanted to inform you guys that SME Quick Wins by MDEC works with technology solution providers to offer the technology on pro bono basis at a discounted price to SMEs, also working with BSN and SME Bank to provide digitalization grant up to 5,000 ringgit. To know more about the updates and the details, the links will be posted on the comment section as well. You can actually go and check it out. And to those who are Facebook addict, just like me, you can also register the login and join the group of 100 Go Digital on Facebook, where you can get more information about the MDEC initiative. All right, and now let's move on to our next segment. It is time to get drenched with idea rain through the panel discussion over the topic SMEs talent management during and post COVID-19 era. Remember, for any questions, click on the Q&A tab and type over your questions over there. And let's introduce our panelists for this episode. First up, Sam Hagag, Country Manager, Manpower. A chemical engineer by training and over 20 years experience in the HR services industry in Europe, the Middle East and Asia, Sam has a wealth of experience in the implementation of HR solutions and best practices gained from working with a wide range of local and multinational organizations. Next up, Dr. Sumitra Nair, Vice President, Digital Talent Development, MDEC. Dr. Sumitra is Vice President at MDEC, in charge of the digital talent development. Her mandate is to work with like-minded ecosystem partners to build a sustainable and quality talent pool for digital technology sectors. In this capacity, Dr. Sumitra spearheads digital technology and data talent development strategies for the entire talent lifecycle, aimed at nurturing a strong talent pipeline as well as securing continuous career relevant for existing workforce. To date, this is the most exciting point of, I believe, in her entire bio, that to date her work has impacted more than 1 million Malaysian guys. 1 million Malaysians. Welcome, Dr. Sumitra. Professor Pervez K. Ahmed, Head School of Business, Monash University, Malaysia. Professor Pervez is currently the head of school at the School of Business in Monash University, Malaysia. He's also the Director of Global Asia in the 21st Century, in bracket GA21 research platform in the campus. Professor Pervez is a professor in management, and his research expertise are in the areas of management innovation, business process management, knowledge and learning, and much more. Welcome, Professor. Moderating this discussion, as I said, and I have already feared, Sri is going to take my job very soon. Sridharan Velasamy, CEO, Word Labs Global. Sri is the founder and CEO of Word Labs Global, an integrated communications company and its regional business platform. Also the chairman of the Word Lab Business Network, which comprise of the Global Business Services and Fourthly platform. Sri, take it away.
Thank you, Bali. Good morning to all. It was a great presentation from Wu. What I like most about it is how all of us are actually learners for life and not necessarily teachers, and that learning behaviors and platforms may have changed, but we approach learning, our approach towards learning stays the same as long as we understand that learning is for life and doesn't stop at any moment of our life, right? So another takeaway is that how technology shift has made a level playing field for all, both large, big companies with big resources and also small companies, right? So new tools have made learning platforms more accessible for all, be it micro businesses, SMEs, or large companies with big resources. And that indeed, in my opinion, is a rare bright spark in these gloomy crisis climate, right? So with that, let's just get to our panel session. So good morning to all. And this is an important topic that is affecting many of our businesses, right? So we are honored to create this panel. So how much will world of work change in this post-pandemic world? Will COVID-19 have a drastic impact on talent strategies? While it's important to tackle near-term challenges, right? So, but SMEs must avoid taking a short-sighted approach towards talent management, because it's a marathon, right? So, without further ado, let's just get straight to our panelists. We have Sam from Manpower, Dr. Sumitra from MDEC, and Professor Pervez from Monash University. So the idea of this panel is to make this session as casual as possible, and maybe a little less technical jargon to make the session more accessible to all, from top level CEOs right down to laymen, right? So to set the stage for today's session, let's take an aerial view on this subject. In the immediate term, SMEs have been clearly focused on, of course, cost containment efforts, right? Cash flows and stuff. We have seen most SMEs in Malaysia freeze hiring and changing their recruitment practices. And staff and executives in many industries have, of course, taken salary reductions, and some, unfortunately, even unpaid leave. So perhaps all three our panelists can take a couple of minutes just to give their general view or an overview on how, in your opinion, will talent management will generally evolve in the short term over the next 12 months, perhaps. And maybe we can start with Dr. Sumitra.
Thank you, Sri. Firstly, thank you to Word Labs and the MDEC SME adoption team for inviting me to share my perspectives. I think you're right, definitely the SMEs will need to rethink, right? Rethink what's going to happen with the workforce going forward. Of course, the first, as you pointed out, the first priority would have been to survive. But moving forward, how do you then move into not just survive, but thrive, yeah? And so if you look at it, and this is an acknowledged fact, and I'm sure you all have been seeing that week after week as you join these sessions, SMEs now more than ever, they must already get onto this digital bandwagon. Question is, are their existing workforce and their existing processes, are they ready to be part of this digital wave, yeah, that we're facing? And I think in my mind, there are two key things that SMEs will need to look into to ride this wave and come out on top. First is workforce transformation, right? And of course, yes, as we spoke about, and I think the Vutran spoke about online learning and so on and so forth, and that really is very much part of the reskilling play, right? Because you may have a bunch of people in your organization, they may not be savvy when it comes to, the most basic remote working tools, but even as you move up the value chain in this digital business world, you need to start thinking about things like digital marketing, cloud computing, data analytics, so on and so forth. And so reskilling is going to be really important. And I know in the past, sometimes SMEs, we have many, and we heard that even earlier, yeah, we have many other conflicting priorities. But I think this is an absolute must. And this is where I think MDEC can support a little bit, because what you might find is there's a lot out there. There are online learning platforms, there are training providers, there are in all forms, yeah, and in all forms and in all kinds of different channels. And so what we are trying to do is we're actually trying to sift through these for you to some extent. And over the next few months, we will be publishing lists of training programs that industry experts have already verified. Yeah. So keep a lookout for that and have a look at it. But I think most important is, yes, you have to start investing, if not money, at least time in learning and development. And yes, not necessarily in traditional classroom training. It could be on-demand, bite-sized training, as the speaker earlier mentioned. Secondly is, while you want to reskill, you might also be thinking, are my people even, are they having the right mindset? Are they having the right orientation to be reskilled for this new world we're facing? And so this is where perhaps in the short term, you may have to think about outsourcing. Yeah. Good news is there are an increasing number of freelancers out there, either those that have already been doing freelance work or those that are joining the freelance services market now because of the current situation. People are taking unpaid leave. Some people are getting even laid off, yeah? And so there are a number of freelance talents out there who are able to support you if you are looking at embarking on your digitization efforts, yeah? And again, here at MDEC, we have some initiatives that we can guide you on this journey. We can talk about it later. And the third is, of course, when you talk about hiring, right? Because, you may be, if you are blessed enough to be benefiting from this whole situation, you may be looking at expansion. So that's where, again, plenty of fresh grads coming out. They can be molded, right? And at the same time, there are also experienced talents out there because of the job market. So I think first is workforce transformation. Second is probably company culture. Yeah, because, and again, this one is something which maybe as SMEs, we may think sometimes, do we really have the time? We're thinking about bottom line. But I think there are enough studies out there to show a close link between having the right company culture with driving productivity. And so you need to ask yourself, the culture that you have today, is it relevant and is it timely in this current situation? Yeah. So are you agile? Are you thinking about agility, not just in how you work, but even basic things like working hours, right? I mean, a lot of your staff members will be juggling between work and family. Is it realistic to expect a 9 to 6 kind of an environment, or is it going to be something different? If you've had KPIs in the past, how are you going to manage performance even going forward in this agile world? So things like that. And then, your employees may also be, having a lot of emotional stress at this point. And so how are you going to keep encouraging them and inspiring them? Do you have a strong sense of purpose? So I think these are all things that SMEs will need to start thinking about as they go forward in this new world. Back to you, Sri.
Thank you. Professor Perwais, what's your take on this? Just a quick overview before we start getting into detailed questions and insights.
Thank you very much, Sri. I think what I would sort of like to do is to sort of follow up from where Dr. Sumitra left off, and that is actually sort of looking at and taking stock of people. As you know, people are actually one of the most important assets in organizations. So whatever our transformation is, whether it is with COVID-19, which is actually pushing us with immediate effect to sort of make very fast changes, the most important thing to remember is that people having happy, satisfied, and engaged employees are your major asset. Long time ago, about 15 years ago, in fact, I wrote a book on internal marketing, which was based on that very premise, which said that in order to actually have good customer service, excellent customer service, you have to have happy, satisfied employees. So I think one of the major tasks that we have to sort of look at is what is happening to our employees, what is their current state, and how are they actually coping with this particular transition. And I think when you sort of look at the facts, and if we look at the research which has been done for many years, it actually tells you that, for example, if we have high performance teams with engaged employees, they're actually 20% more profitable. That is the sort of the happiness dividend or the health dividend. If we sort of look at teams or cultures which are actually really sort of appreciated, you sort of find that the impact on revenue is huge as well, maybe even quadruple, fourfold impact. So this is the type of impact that we're actually looking at. So what is taking place in organizations today, in today's world of COVID-19? And I think what we sort of can do is sort of observe that there are three types of employee experiences and three types of vulnerabilities. I think the first type of vulnerability is the physical vulnerability, which is faced by frontliners. So we find that people who are mission critical operations individuals in SMEs that have to make the machines work, have to sort of keep the factory going, are at the front line. And they're actually very anxious. I mean, there's a survey by YouGov in England recently, which says that about 60% of the individuals are actually sort of very anxious and worried that they may actually sort of get COVID-19. So these are immediate worries and threats to the person himself. So when we're talking about the work environment and making the transitions, we have to know that we have to cater to that. We have to sort of provide safety to those individuals. The second type of vulnerability, I think, is really as companies are facing cash flow problems, they're actually looking to furlough employees. And what is taking place there is actually very interesting as well. As soon as you start furloughing employees, individuals rightly become very distressed. They feel pressures to sort of look after the family. How will they sort of make ends meet? These financial concerns have very strong domino effect on individuals' health. A lot of studies are showing that what is actually taking place is that there's an increase in drinking, there's an increase in smoking, there's an increase in violence at the home. So whilst you're under lockdown, there's a greater level of abuse that is taking place. And that is all to do with job security. When you don't have job security, you become anxious, and all of these things come into play, and you start becoming depressed. So this type of impact is actually tremendous. And what we're sort of seeing, we just did a survey, Monash and my team, we did a survey, and we're sort of seeing that this kind of impact is coming through. Vulnerability, I think, is people have been now working from home, but and very privileged. We said that they're very privileged, but there are still stresses there. There are very significant stresses. There is a survey by the Institute of Employment Studies, which actually shows that people working from home, about 50% of them are actually very unhappy. Why? because they feel that they're in actually an isolated environment. They're losing sleep because they're not sure about their jobs. They're burnt out because they're having to juggle the family, the children, and everything else. And on top of that, they're all sitting doing Zoom meetings. So they're actually getting physical complaints. They have backaches, they have eye strain. So these are all stresses. So what we're observing is that actually quite a large population is actually either about 40%, I think, are the figures, are either burnt out or exhausted. About 25% are actually feeling depressed, even some feeling hopeless, and a lot of them are not actually reaching out. So it then becomes incumbent upon the employers, whether you're a large firm or a small firm, to actually take actions to look after the health of your employees. So I think most importantly, and I don't want to take too much time, is you must create empathy and trust in your workplace in order to create the transition. So before you can make a transition, you have to have your employees with you. They are your most important asset, and if you lose them in the way that you treat them, if you actually are dispassionate in the way you treat them, you will find that they will not go with you on the journey. So you need people to be with you on the journey, and that requires you to actually look after their health, physical as well as emotional and mental. Okay, I will leave that.
Thank you, Professor. So very interesting. Of course, during this COVID-19 crisis, right, the major issue for any employee or even employers is, of course, their own personal health, right? And the family health is more important in everybody's eyes, and hence empathy, as Professor Riley put, is important before any transition can happen, end of the day. So that has to be stitched in. And Sam, your quick overview about it, just take a couple of minutes on this, just your quick overview concerns about the entire scenario, Sam.
Thanks, Sri. One of the great advantages after speaking to, being last to speak in the distinguished panel, is a lot of the ideas have already been covered. But I think one of the key things, the themes that came out from both of the previous distinguished speakers, is we live in an age where the type of leader is going to be substantially different from any kind of leader that we've ever seen before. We're in an unprecedented environment where the workforce is dispersed, your business is severely disrupted through different buying behaviors of your key stakeholders, and you're trying to rapidly develop new competencies and new skill sets for your organization to remain relevant. Add to that the fact that you have pressures on your profitability of the organization and being able to sustain it in extremely difficult and challenging market conditions. Then you have a recipe for an enormous amount of stress. Prof talked about, health of the individuals. So the type of leadership required, we need to be extremely careful about what are the traits that we need to be. We need to be able to connect with people at a human level in a virtual world. How do you do that?
Yep.
We need to be able to lead a business where the fundamentals that you built the business on may no longer be relevant. You may have new entrants into the market. The way you deliver your business, how you run your business is going to be substantially changed. And then the third component is you're forced through economic survival to make some very, very tough decisions. And the implications of those tough decisions are going to last far, far longer than when COVID-19 has been and gone. So how do you balance a humanitarian perspective with a real hard nose at business dialogue? And I would say to you that there are a couple of things that are going to be very, very important lessons for our leaders to be very conscious of. Number one is transparency. We talked an awful lot about being clear with your employees, having them enroll and be part of that vision of what you see. Difficult decisions will have to be made. There is no question about that, and there's no getting away from it. But how you make that decision, how you communicate that decision, and how you treat the impacted employees is going to define your organization long, long after this global pandemic is gone. And then the second thing is how do you take a completely fresh eyes view of your organization and reshape it not for what you think business as usual post-COVID-19, because that will no longer exist. Life will never return to what it was before COVID-19. We're facing a new reality, a new norm, which is going to drive us to think very, very carefully about, how do we move forward. So I think this will create some significant opportunities in finding talent within your organization. We are already seeing that within our own organization. People who have been very, very low key have emerged as real, true leaders moving forward, whereas others who you would have expected would have risen to the challenge have struggled. So it's a question of how do you deal with that? How do you bring the whole organization with you in a different reality? Interesting times ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Sam. So while I was preparing for this session, right, what I realized that it's kind of a tough subject because everything is interrelated, right? We can't touch on one point without touching the other end of the day. So bear with me on that as we drill down further as much as we can. So let's get directly into the need of the hour, right? The impact of COVID-19 on SMEs workforce and productivity. So when SMEs think about thriving in a digital world, they probably think first about technology, right? It's evolving so fast that we as people or business have to constantly struggle to adapt. But the greatest challenge is not the tech itself, as I can understand. It's developing a knowledgeable, flexible, and technically fluent workforce, right? So ideas should flow from all corners of the company, not just full-time managers or executives, but also a group of, why not, group of freelancers who jump in when work hits up, right? So the demand for more talented workforce goes beyond adapting to new digital world. And perhaps Dr. Sumitra can take this question on how workforce transformation can happen. I know she touched on that point a little bit just now very briefly, but perhaps you can also define for our audience what is this workforce transformation and how they can get on in doing this.
Thank you, Sri. Yeah, I mentioned this because I think this is extremely important, right? And as you said, yeah, we can invest in technology and we can invest in tools. But if we don't know how to optimize the tools and technologies we're purchasing, then it's going to be investment down the drain, right? And so the issue is, I think, many of our SMEs, I mean, if you look at the numbers, even digital marketing, yeah, I think less than 5% of SMEs in Malaysia are actively involved in e-commerce. At least this was just before MCO. Now with MCO, hopefully the number is higher. So in those environments, the chances are a lot of the people in the organization do not have the basic skills that's needed. And I think before the MCO, it was perhaps harder to imagine how we were going to make this leap, and it may have seemed to be a giant leap. But I think today with MCO, in some ways, COVID has softened the ground. You know, it has made it more fertile for people to have a flexible mindset. I mean, if you think about it, even even you have your aging parents, yeah, who now have no choice. They are online. They are learning how to Zoom, yeah, just the way they learned Facebook before this. They are now learning how to Zoom and all the other applications, Google Meet, so on and so forth. And so I think the time is right. People are more open to the idea that they need to continue to upskill. Of course, you can start with baby steps. And chances are many of the SMEs are already starting with these baby steps in terms of at least getting people to work remotely. But the question is, how do you now keep inspiring them to go to the next level? And here's where we need to rethink the way we reskill our people. Because in the past, maybe we're thinking, oh, we got to send people away, you know, for a week or 5 days or 3 days or whatever. They're going to go to some other location and get trained. And so I'm going to lose that person for 3 days or a week or whatever. But today, because it's all online and there are plenty of very good quality online platforms out there, it's possible for people to do bite-sized learning, as the speaker this morning spoke about. So you can just do like a 2-3 minutes, you know, what you need to know kind of thing, learn it, go and do it, come back. So it's going to be a very different mindset to training and learning from before. Before it's, going away for extended periods. Now it's on the job, it's bite-sized, it's learn as you need and go. And that's probably what's going to happen, and that's probably what's going to be the easiest to do for a lot of companies. And there are lots of good news is there are lots of free applications out there right now. So if I were an SME, lead by example. If they see the CEO or the owner or the C-suite, the management doing it, chances are the teams will start to do it too. So lead by example, sign up to a program, whether it's EDX or Coursera or whatever. A lot of it is free right now. And then you actually start to see people will start to follow. So I think it's baby steps, but the time is right. The ground is fertile now.
All right. So in terms of, with these crises, right, of course, cash flow is a major concern for everybody, right? So in your opinion, or maybe Dr. Sumitra or even Professor or Sam can also add on and chip in whenever possible. How do, in your opinion, SMEs can fill short-term skill gaps or even higher experienced talents in these times? Is there, in your opinion, a platform where they can pay per use in order to get experienced talents or short-term to fill up short-term skill gaps?
Let me just take that, and I'm sure the others would be jumping in too. I think from MDEC's point of view, we have the GLOW platform. This is it stands for the GLOW, and it stands for Global Online Workforce. And so it's a platform where we've tried to aggregate various freelance work providers onto the platform, and we also get people who are available to do this freelance work to come and sign up. So even if you were to Google it now and go on it, you'll probably already see a number of jobs there that people are putting up for freelancers, and if you're a freelancer, you can sign up for that platform. So if you're an SME and you have bite-sized project work that needs to get done like quickly, one way is get onto the Glow platform and put your work out there, and then be able to tap any number of these freelancers from across the country.
Is there a specific in this MDEC platform? Is there a specific industry or skill that you're looking at, or is it a general?
It's general. So we've got two platforms. The Global Online Workforce is more for those who are maybe more technically skilled, whether it's graphic designers or software developers or a bit more technically oriented. Whereas we'll have another platform called eRezeki. eRezeki is really for those who, it could be very basic skills like content moderation, data entry, just putting your data onto an online platform if you want to migrate that and you need people to do data entry. So that's the eRezeki platform. So it's two different platforms, but go in and have a look and explore. So eRezeki as well partners with various other platform providers. It could be Service Hero, it could be Kautin, many others out there. But that's more for like the basic work, whereas we're looking at more technical talent. Glow is a great platform.
Brilliant. How has the reception have been so far, Dr. Sumitra, on this Glow platform?
I think
on the supply side and also from the buyer side.
Yeah, I think supply side has been great and it's growing, right now as well, given the current situation. The demand side is something I think we need to keep working on, because in Malaysia, perhaps not very many companies have tried it, and not very many companies have the policies that allow this. So these are questions that I think SME owners will need to start thinking about, because before COVID, there was a bit of a comfort time that they didn't really have to tap onto this kind of talents. But going forward, this is definitely a viable option to explore. And so, if they need sort of, information on what it means, how do you actually structure the work and so on, the team at MDEC can actually support them and advise them.
Just building
because I think it's
that.
also a boon for SMEs like this, because we have a lot of. Please, Sam.
Yeah, I was just going to re-emphasize what Dr. Sumitra was saying. This means that SMEs are going to go back and look at what is my core focus. What do I need? What are the skill sets? What are the competencies that I need to have as an organization. Everything else, you need to look at the variability of that and a just-in-time utilization. And if there is one thing that this global pandemic has taught us is, as business leaders, we need to separate what is fixed and what is variable. And what you're finding is that the variable component of running a business is becoming much, much higher. And as you start to really dissect your business, you're going to find that there's going to be very little that you would need to retain completely within the organization. Typically, that would be R&D, where it's, you know, where you need to protect that kind of information or that kind of knowledge. But for everything else, there are experts out there, and it's really all about aligning your costs with your revenue stream. You know, the biggest challenges that organizations are facing globally, and that's not just SMEs, but major multinationals, is in times of growth, it's very, very easy to continue to layer and layer talent within your organization. It's talent hoarding, right? If I have them, nobody else is going to. But the reality is this is not sustainable from a way of moving forward. And what's interesting that we're seeing is we're seeing many of our employees are now thinking this is a great opportunity for me to have some flexibility in the way I work. Not just in terms of whether I work from home or from the office, but when I work and how I work. So my advice to SMEs is rethink how your work is getting done, rethink your cost structure, and be far more open to different ways of getting things done. And we're certainly doing that, not just as part of the support that we provide for our clients, but we're doing that ourselves. You know, we've spent quite a bit of time throughout COVID-19 is having an outside-in perspective on our business. And we've already identified many areas where we could do things differently, more effectively, better for the customer, and better for the people doing the work. That allows you then to be able to use whatever funds that you have in really developing your people in having more effective skills that are going to improve their life from a work perspective, but also their value in terms of their contribution to the company.
Can I just add to that as well? Just to add to what Sumitra and Sam has said, I think there's 3 stages that we should be really aware of when we're looking at this. Sumitra talked about having bite-sized learning, and that is about survival today. I think we have to look at the transitions that are taking place. The first part is survival today. The second part is really to be ready for tomorrow, prepare for tomorrow, which is the medium-term outlook. And the third part is to actually plan for the future, which is the long term. This first part is really about being able to compete with others. It's about imitation. The second part is having adaptability, adaptiveness. And the third part is to be really innovative. And what I want to say really is, before you actually start thinking about reskilling and upskilling, the immediate part, you really need to know what the future will be. Where will your firm be into the future? And industries are changing and they're transforming. So you have to have an understanding of the roadmap. Where will your industry sector be into the future? Because that is when you can really build what your immediate training needs are, what your medium-term upskilling needs are, and what the future is. And this is where I think the leaders have to have a deep understanding. They have to work with their associations, understand where that industry is going, what the trajectory is going to be, where the technology will take them. Yes, the COVID has actually provided the catalyst, but the technology transformation was already there. So we need leaders to engage with that, SMEs in particular, to really understand how they will be, what component of the supply chain will they be into the future, and what will they be doing. And this is where the reskilling will come into place, and understanding what kind of bite-sized learning they have to put in place.
Brilliant. Thank you. And Sam, there was interesting insight from all 3 of our panelists, right? So I've got one question for Sam. You spoke about variable and fixed expertise. That's quite interesting too. So, but coming from the staffing industry, right, from Manpower and stuff, what are your views on changing in hiring patterns, right? How does that affect your industry, and how do you approach this hiring when it comes to your customers, right? SMEs and companies, and how this crisis could change these practices in the near term and maybe also in the longer term. See, for example, the unused talent pool is likely to grow as workers are sent home due to, of course, all these shutdowns and SMEs losing business, right? So likewise, the overnight explosion of remote workforce means candidates are likely to be readily available for interviews, for opening recruiters to of course, to fill in, right? So is this a boon for recruiters? How can SMEs better understand this to their advantage? What would be your advice to them? When do they start? Do they come and engage a staffing company to get an advice? What avenue do they have? Do we have a platform or a certain body of work they can immediately get into?
That's a great question, and it's multi-layered. So the way we've seen things happen has been in multiple phases. So typically in a situation like this, and with COVID-19, it was very much amplified in terms of behavior. So the first phase is, as organizations are looking to protect their core employees, what you tend to see is that there is an immediate decline in the contingent workforce. So people release the contractors because they're trying to preserve the jobs of their permanent employees. Absolutely understandable and a natural reaction. Then what happens, you start to see the changes that are driving the business, and very clearly what you start to find is, number one is you have less flexibility in terms of the change of the internal workforce. And with many organizations, what they then realize is their competence as well as skills inventory may not be aligned with the demands of the business direction. Now, we've talked an awful lot about the skills. Our view is skills are transferable. So, you can come from the manufacturing industry and work in finance. You have your abilities to be, for example, a finance professional can be transported. The one thing that is harder, and Dr. Sumitra has kind of alluded to it a little bit earlier, are the competencies of your individuals, the traits that will help them drive the transformation in your organization. So as you go through the second phase where you're doing the inventory, what organizations are seeing is that they have areas where they have potential gaps or potential areas that they need to supplement. So now they are challenged with a choice that they make. When times are good, in a talent type market like Malaysia, the general tendency would be to hire permanent employees, in particular in areas like IT and very specific skill sets where they're not abundant. But at the same time, you have your budget, which is restraining your ability to be able to continue to invest. So the third phase is you start to see organizations that are segmenting their workforce to core, and these are folks that are absolutely essential. And here we're seeing some really interesting patterns. In the past, people would have considered finance as a core function. They would have considered some of the support functions within their organizations absolutely core. We're now seeing organizations that are saying, this is not core, we're going to outsource it, or we're going to bring people in on an as and when basis, including aspects of HR, which is really absolutely amazing, because you would have thought that that's typically, one of the last bastions of permanent employment. So as you go through that, then what you're looking at is segmenting the work that you need to do. So high impact, this is where you need experts in that particular area. And Dr. Sumitra sort of mentioned the Glow platform, where you could bring in that talent on an as and when required in a high impact period of time with a very, very clear deliverable. The second part will be what you would call operationally driven requirements, in terms of there are certain parts of the month where you need a high level of transactions that you would need to process, and you need additional people. And then you're looking at partners who are going to be able to flex up and down. Now, there is another factor involved in all of this, is the humane and the legal aspect of sizing your organization, because releasing staff has implications, legal as well as reputational, that you need to consider. So now our clients are coming back to us and saying, we need to partner with an organization that's going to be able to give us the flexibility in terms of being able to tap into a knowledge base quickly and effectively in the most cost-effective way. So demand for flexibility is going to become more and more in demand by organizations right across the board. And we'll see a fewer number of permanent hiring and much more in terms of flexible workforce, whether it's pure gigging or whether it's an element of flexibility. And that could well be part-timers, where instead of having one permanent employee to do a job, you may have multiple number of part-timers that can be brought on and off as and when. So talent management within an organization becomes a hugely important strategic function.
Thanks. It's a bit of a time constraint, so I've just got about 2 or 3 more questions to run. I've just got to ask Professor Pervez, from the academic standpoint, right, the subject of reskilling, what is the best approach for this for SMEs from the start? Of course, there's a lot of discussion on e-learning and how that can help, and some even doubt that it's actually a silver bullet. So, of course, all can chip in for these questions. So, where does e-learning stand in all this, and what are its limitations, in your opinion?
I think I would sort of really echo what Wu had presented earlier on, and that was that actually, we have to sort of look at how we will sort of do reskilling, how we will do, engage with that. And that will require both an online component as well as a face-to-face component. And what we are seeing across the world, especially with COVID-19, is that universities, colleges, they're all actually going online. They're all sort of creating and moving towards what we call micro-credentials, stackable degrees, stackable qualifications. So when we're actually having the world where, which is actually both universities, colleges, and as Dr. Sumitra said, MDEC also creating stackable qualifications, what we will sort of be able to see is that more and more SMEs will be able to gravitate to those small mini units, which are not 1 week long, 1 year long kind of qualifications, because nobody in this world now has 1 year to do an MBA or 6 months. Even when we used to run courses for executives, which were 3 weeks, no executive has 3 weeks anymore. They essentially have maybe 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. That is the bite-sized packet which is in vogue and which will actually continue. So when we're looking at reskilling and upskilling, what we need to be able to do is to sort of see how we will build the broad, big skill, the core competency, as Sam said. But what is required? What are the bite-sized components? So it's actually sort of looking at the menu set. So having a menu set and being able to customize it individually for that particular employee, for that SME. So I think what we actually have currently in the world is that you will sort of see that there's a vast array of training exercises that actually exist. So the real challenge is to be able to sort of find one which actually really fits your needs, and one which is able to give you both. I mean, I think you can do so much with online, but you have to have that face-to-face interaction and to sort of build those higher skills. So you may have to go to your more local colleges to be able to get access to that, rather than say somebody who's sitting in the US or the UK. Yes, you can tap into some aspects of that, but how do you actually create that face-to-face high-level learning? And Wu also said, noted that as well, on how you have to blend the two together. That is the real future. So I think that will be where we are in terms of skilling.
Right. Thank you. So I think a lot of our discussion is revolving around lots of transition. So which brings us to matter of company culture, right? So Dr. Sumitra, maybe if we can take this question. In your experience and opinion, how can SMEs continue to inspire and encourage their staff, employees to give their best in such uncertain circumstance, very dampening situation, right? So how do you encourage employee productivity when their jobs are changing drastically as we speak? The business is changing drastically as we speak and stuff like that. So it's a matter of company culture. How do we cultivate these in these uncertain times?
I think, what comes to mind are a few things. Number one, the role of the leader, as was alluded to by Prof. as well as Sam earlier, the role of the leader is critical, right, in creating the tone for this culture. And when you talk about the kind of culture that is required for these current times, there are a few aspects that I can think of. Number one, I think the sense of purpose is probably most important. People need to understand what is the organization about, what are they trying to achieve, how are they making an impact on other people, right? So purpose is what unites people. And we've seen this with many of the greatest companies who've gone through adversities, over the years. Sense of purpose is what unites them. Number two, I think there also needs to be a great deal of trust and accountability, right? So we can't operate in a way where it's a very industrial, breathing down your neck, kind of environment. At the same time, the employee also needs to be accountable, to take responsibility and do what is right? Do what is right for the organization and do what is right for that own person, which means that it's not just about doing an honest day's job, but it's also about reskilling at your own time. In the past, maybe we would have said, can I get time off to go to a course, to learn new things? And so today, we don't have that luxury of time. And so there may be instances where you need to learn on your own, at your own time, without having the employer push down training all the time. So trust and accountability. And the third thing that I think is really important in this new environment as far as culture goes, as I mentioned earlier, is agility, right? So in the past, if you're saying, you have to do certain things in a certain way, this is the process, yeah? We have to have a committee meeting, for example, to approve certain things, and it has to be face-to-face with X number of people, so on and so forth. Today, we need to think differently. What does that mean? How do we get our processes to be more agile, to be quicker to respond to what the environment needs? At the same time, even agility in performance management. Right? What does that mean? In the past, we are defined by KPIs. Today, it's a moving goalpost, and your business may need to pivot, as Prof also mentioned, and Sam, because your business model may need to change. So how are you going to pivot? Is it going to be a quarterly thing? Is it going to be a monthly thing? So those things are going to be very, very important. So I think those are the elements, at least in my mind, when you talk about culture, that will be required to weather this and go forward.
Brilliant, thank you. So I think my team is now haggling me and saying that we have to make way for the SME Unplugged clinic. But I think I will stretch it a little bit more. So I think one of the subject which Prof and also Sam and also Dr. Sumitra touched was mental well-being, right? So there are a lot of changes, and these changes are impacting employees' well-being and mental health. They feel stressed, insecure, and worried about their jobs, viability of their company, and ability to take care of their families, right? So what are some quick tips that you can give to SMEs that they can embark on in order to make it a bit more easier for their staff? Because end of the day, this well-being is important when the transition happens, end of the day, right? They have to be in a good state of mind to be able to handle that transition. Perhaps Prof can take these on, and what are your views in this sensitive and urgent matter of staff well-being, and also good to touch on the mental well-being of SME owners like me, because we are also going bonkers too here.
So first of all, I think just to sort of build on what Sumitra said in terms of organizational culture, I think what is the best way to demonstrate care, because and that is to actually upskill your employees, to give them the skills to be employable into the future, to be able to earn their living, and this will actually going to help their health, their mental health, the physical health as well. So this is the core part. So upskilling individuals is a demonstration of care, and it has a very strong what I call a perceptual spillover, because if you show care to your employees, others will see it. They will see why they value your organization, why your brand's reputation will actually go up. So there's a very strong perceptual spillover that takes place. Just to sort of go back to what do you think are, what are the key things, and I don't want to take too much time. So I think the first step in sort of preserving emotional well-being and healthcare of others is self-care. The first step must be, you must, as a leader of the organization, look after yourself. You can't panic. You have to keep your head around you whilst others are actually sort of losing their head. And because you are also susceptible to those vulnerabilities and those stresses. In fact, you're probably more susceptible because you're responsible for everybody else's livelihood. So you have to look after yourself. So I think that is very important. So if you are not looking after yourself, you can't look after others. The second part is, I think step 2 is communicate. Because anxieties really come through when people don't actually understand what is happening in their environment. If they don't know why you're doing what you are doing, they have to actually sort of understand that. And if you are able to talk to your employees, give them logical and empathetic facts, clear, but not too many facts, very succinct, very precise, that will actually help them understand where you're going. It will reduce their anxieties, improve their health and well-being. So communication, I think, is very, very important. The third step is actually listen, not talk. So part of the communication angle is that we just communicate, we go downwards and tell everybody what we want. But you have to make space for conversations, because people are emotional beings. Actually, when we look at neuropsychology, we actually understand the human brain is actually going to build up primarily of emotional content. 60 to 70% is emotional, and the rational part is only about 30 to 40%. So emotion, EQ, actually trumps IQ. So we have to be aware of that in actually managing people to make sure that we look after and address those anxieties. And I think it was Sam and Sumitra touched upon leadership style. Your tonality, how you talk to individuals becomes very different as well. So in these kind of environments, you have to change. You might be very good as an authoritative individual, but this circumstance requires you to actually adjust the style. You have to show empathy. You have to be able to connect to people. So the third step I would sort of say is that you must personalize and connect. Remember, people are actually human beings. They are very specific. So you have to know your employees and you have to get to know them in depth. You can't just say, okay, everybody is the same. They're not the same. So you have to actually sort of do that. And the last step, I think, is about support, to provide support. It's not business as usual under this environment. You should relax your rules. I mean, in the university, for example, we have many rules and we're very bureaucratic. But under this environment, we've had to change. We've had to relax many of our procedures and rulings to actually sort of make sure that whilst individuals are under stress, we actually support them. We show them that we actually understand what they're feeling. We talk to them, we have conversations, and we respond to them empathetically by adjusting and relaxing those rules. So I think processes need to have that flexibility for this type of environment. And lastly, you have to sort of provide support. I think we have to sort of provide support. And in terms of health, I mean, SMEs, I guess, don't have counselors. They don't have professional therapists. But one thing, as I said earlier, is listen. Because if you look at what the best therapists in the world do, 99% of the time, they actually just sit there and listen. They only talk 1% of the time. So actually, providing support can come in many different ways, but you have to be able to do that. And it may be that you actually provide support which you may not have the resources, but you signal where they can get access to support. So for example, you may be able to show your employees where they can actually get support funds, where they can access new skills. You're just showing them and signposting where they're able to tap into those, because you may yourself be resource constrained as an SME, but if you're able to help your employees just by giving them that particular signpost. So I think there's a lot of ways that we can actually sort of engage with our employees and give them that support. I just want to end with one last simple fact, which I picked up in a Gallup survey. And it talks about what is the percentage of staff that are actually engaged in businesses? What is the level of engagement? And it was a shocking fact when I looked this up. 85% of employees are not engaged. And they're not engaged because they don't have meaningful jobs. They don't have jobs which connect them to their value sets. They don't have leaders which are able to empathize with them. So engagement is key, and I think the best way of engaging people is to develop them. I'd like to stop there.
Thank you. So we are getting close to the end of our time together in this panel. Sam, if there is one thing that you would like this audience to take away from this session, just 1 minute, what would it be? Start with Sam.
I think you have to look at life differently. And just building on what's already been said about leadership, the first thing is give people a sense of purpose. That means open, honest communication, living with the fact that you don't necessarily have to have all of the answers to all of the questions. Listen more, talk less, develop an understanding of what people are going through. This is the hardest thing, because very often as leaders, we are preoccupied with leading the company. We've got the weight of the organization on our shoulder. And sometimes it's okay to be honest with people and say, I don't have the answer. Let's work on it together. I think the key here, if there is one single takeaway that I would say to everybody, is develop a sense of community within your organization, because it's far more effective to work together as an organization, moving that. It's your job as a leader to set the compass in terms of where you're going to go, and then create the environment where the organization works together to move in that direction. So think yourself as the maestro of the orchestra, rather than necessarily being the lead player.
All right. Thank you. Dr. Sumitra, just one quick takeaway within a minute that you would like the audience to take away from this session. What would that be?
Yeah, I think I'd like to echo Sam. Leadership is probably most important in these times. And as you move forward, think about how you're going to prepare your troops, prepare your people to ride this wave and to come out on top of it. Thank you.
And Professor, one last concluding remark from you.
I think I agree with what both my eminent panelists have both said. I think leadership is definitely key, and we have to keep people at the center of that particular equation. And the way we can keep that people at the center is to really demonstrate care. So whilst we're being moved with technology, we have to understand technology works through people. So people still will remain the core, and we will be able to use technology to enable us to transform ourselves into a new future. So people are still the most important commodity in organizations. Technology is the great enabler.
All right, we have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much to all our esteemed panelists. A big thanks to all of you, and to all our audience. Thanks again for joining us. I think the team is compiling a couple of questions. Perhaps the MC can look into it and post it back to the panelists if we have time, right? So with that, thank you very much, and have a great day ahead to all.
Thank you.
Okay. Big up to Sam from Manpower, Dr. Sumitra from MDEC, Professor Pervez from Monash University, Malaysia, and Sri from Word Labs for the panel discussion. Now, yes, you are right, Sri, that we had a lot of questions during the panel discussion, and we will attend to them via the chat section because time is against us. Because sometimes when we have so good amount of conversations going on, we lose track of time, because I need to quickly introduce our final segment, the SME Unplugged, because I do not want to offend him as well. Now, the SME Unplugged Clinic is going to be talking about how to automate your people operation and create better talent organization. Our doctor, it's a clinic, right? So I just basically say our doctor or practitioner for this clinic is Evan Koh, founder, kakitangan.com. Evan was a general manager in NASDAQ CCIH, owning P&L of a business unit of approximately 100 people. Before that, he spent 5 years in Microsoft Office R&D working on products such as Office 2010, 2013, 365, OneNote, and a Link, which we now know as Skype for Business on Android. He also worked in enterprise solution, pre-sales, IPO, corporate finance, and other software engineering roles as well. So off to you, Dr. Evan Koh, founder, kakitangan.com.
Thank you, Barry. I'm projecting my screen. Please let me know if everyone can see my slides.
Yes, we can see it.
Or not? Yep. All right.
Yep.
Thank you. So let me start the section quickly. My name is Evan. We make kakitangan.com. Just an expectation management very quickly. I'm going to talk about SMEs. All right. We are talking about few people to few hundred people. I prepared the content very much based on the management team, the C-levels, the directors level, senior managers, HR, finance. All right. So this is what we are going to talk about. So Barry quickly went through who am I. So I'm not going to repeat. Very much. The first things that I would like to share is I'm actually part of the committee members in Chinese Chamber of Kuala Lumpur. It's a 116 years old chamber, Chamber of Commerce. It's crazy, right? It's a century-old Chamber of Commerce, and suddenly everyone, the top leaders, needs to go to Zoom for meeting, right? Get to online meetings. We just to explain to you how slow is the chamber. We are actually having a meeting like every 3 months, and it has to be physical, face to face. And now we even need to design a mechanism to run our annual general meeting this year in online, right? So we going through all the legal aspects of things. So things are changing. So we are talking about just echoing what Dr. Smith-Strauss and Sam saying, like it or not, things are changing. So welcome to the new norm. We are talking about even MCO is lifted. You probably expect 6 to 8 months down the road, we will actually live at this scenario, because very likely life will get back to normal if the vaccine is out, and that's probably a year away, right? So you see that actually a lot of us, we are hit by revenue, right? Gets down, and then we need to restructure. Some of us, we actually have our revenue increase, and at the same time, you need to restructure it as well. So if you look at it, the internet joke says, what drive the digital transformation changes? They name it CEO, CTO, or COVID-19. Let's start from C as well. So if you don't change, your competitors is going to change, right? So if you are going to survive throughout the journey, you are changing. Because if you're not changing, your staff would be wondering, like, am I working in a dinosaur company, or am I working in a year 2020 company, right? So that actually brings it back to ourselves doing reflection of what are the important things of the HR work inside the company. So last time we travel around Malaysia and having workshop, we see face to face. So this is the first question I normally ask, right? Very interestingly, out of 10 companies, most of the cases, 8 companies will tell me, look, payroll is my most important thing. So the first people, the HR headcount I actually hire, the person look after the payroll. And then after that, of course, another 2% will talk about this paper form of leave, paper form of claims, etc., etc. So I was looking at it, it's like, yeah, despite I'm selling a payroll software today, but is it really the important thing if you think about it? So assuming payroll is the most important thing, then if I have one single payroll officer, I just hire another 3 people working on payroll. Does it help my company? So if you think about it, maybe not, right? My revenue may not go up because of this. My people may not be more engaged because of this. So it seems like it's not the most important thing. You should just actually leave it to software to automate, right? Why are we spending so much time on it? We should spend time on the most important thing, right? So here it goes. What are the most important things? Normally we say there is 2 things. Items number 1, when we hire the great people working in the company, how do we ensure each and everyone is 120% heart inside the company? Every time when we have face-to-face roadshow, this is the moment that everyone having that smiley face, right? Everyone to have 120% heart inside the company. Easy or not? Not easy. You can see why Professor just now was actually avocating the employee engagement. And this is one of the toughest things, right? Yet, you need to actually get it through. So what should we do? So by fixing anything, you need to really figure out what is the basics behind. The first thing first, who are your best talents? Who are your brightest talents? Okay, every single one of the management level in the company, you probably have a few names in your head, all right? Assuming those are the bright talents. You really need them to help you to sort out the dirty work. You really need them to improve the companies. And this person has the potential to bring the company to the next level. All right, those people. Why are they leaving? First of all, normally the smarter people or the brighter people, they will think about, is there a future for me inside this company? All right. Is the company actually growing very fast? Is it double up, triple up, 10 times of growth? Right. So if the company is growing very fast, obviously there will be more and more responsibility and scope created inside the company. And because of that, you need a lot more talents joining the company, and people inside with the domain knowledge, they can actually go up, right? Very fast. So is the company growing fast enough? If the company is not growing fast enough, then the next question is, what makes me moving out, right? Then they are talking about, okay, is the performance review system fair or not? Correct or not? So do they trust the performance system or not? The moment they are asking about performance system, what is in the mind is actually, how do I actually score it well in the performance system? And why? Because I want to go up. Do you agree with it? Okay. The smarter people he or she is, the more emphasis they have in this. Okay. Assuming I cannot grow my career here. Okay. Then what is the next thing? We are talking about, am I being a better person if I spend another 3 years here? Right? Can I grow my skill set? Am I learning something that I wanted to learn? Am I moving to a direction of my career goal? So this is the second thing they are thinking about, right? So if the company is not really growing, I myself not really growing, why am I staying? The next thing we are talking about, do I have a sense of community inside the company? Just like what Sam suggested just now, right? So we are here every day. We see each other face to face, before the COVID-19. So, there are staff having a gang, eating lunch together, talk about bad things about the bosses. Do I enjoy working here? Do I hang around with people that I like to hang around, right? This is the third thing. So if you think about it, if I don't have a future here, if I cannot grow myself here, and I don't like working here, why am I staying? Because of money. Straightforward, right? So if the money is not right as well, as a company, you better think about the fifth one, which is you probably need to hire, because the person's likelihood they need to leave, right? To look for what we are talking about. And for many SME, when the talent is leaving, the first initial things they are thinking on is to hire the next person, right? You see, it's the bottom up approach. They hire the next person. If the money is not right, then we need to figure out what's the right money to attract. But if you think about it, just like Dr. Sumitra said, what is the higher purpose of the company? What do you want to achieve? What makes them actually staying outside of the money? Money is there, important, but other than that, your top people is actually thinking, the thinking process is actually from top to bottom, which is where's my future? Am I become stronger, or do I like working here? All right, so fix those things during this period if you can manage to get some time. So there's also a joke in the industry that HR people needs to acquire marketing skill set, especially digital marketing. This is the fun part, right? Hey, why are we doing so? I mean, aren't the sales and marketing, the marketers actually acquire the marketing skill sets? No, the HR actually needs to do that, because when your company is doing marketing for the product and services to the customer, at the same time, the internal convincing of your own staff and convincing the new people to join the company is marketing work as well. So you're creating actually an internal branding of marketing. That explains why people like Google has so much articles talk about what's the life working in Google and how does the Google's pantry looks like, right? So do they actually feel like, look, first of all, am I working in the right company with the right purpose? What is the Tao of the company? So I know that I wanted to dedicate my life here. All right. Then how do we make sure we are engaging? A lot of joke. Another side is on the performance. You see, from the company perspective, we always try to make a performance system that's fair enough. Ideally, a fair performance system will offend 5 people and make 5 people happy, right? But the reality is, any single performance system, 9% out of 10 will not like it, because everyone thought that they actually should get more, right? So at the end of the day, it's not only how you actually make it fair, but also how you actually market it to make sure everyone feel like, okay, I agree with it and I think it's fair. It's a marketing. So outside from that, apart from the branding and marketing, so then small little things that you can do for your company. First of all, a lot of SME, they have dinner, annual dinner for company meeting. Try to turn the company meeting to visionary meeting. Where are we going to? Why are we doing this? Who are we engaging? What do we look for in the short term, next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months? Turn that into visionary meeting. This is a perfect scenario that you can sync up together with all the staff. Second thing, get your teams probably spend a single day out of a month to brainstorm, identify the top 3 issues and proceed to fix them. All right. Aren't we actually do that all the time? A lot of time, not really. So if you think about it, if the people actually working on this, you may not see big changes in 1 month, 2 months, but if you last it throughout the 3 years period, your company will be a very different company. And the next one, all corporates, bigger size corporate, 1,000 people size and above, they all know, mainly develop the manager level one, right? People come and go because of manager level one. You can no longer build your SOP when the companies get bigger and bigger. Your manager level one needs to do that, right? So spend a lot of effort on that. Your manager line level 1, that the individual contributor reports to them. The next one, we are talking about, you know, the activities that get the family together. But after MCO, maybe you want to reduce that, right? Still considering any things that you can actually touch the family. So what happened is, I always remember back in China, there are some companies actually do this. They, during the Father's Day, the Mother's Day, they actually send a very small gift to the father or mother, the parents of the staff. And it says, thank you for having your lovely daughter or son, brilliant person working in our company. That makes a very big difference. Imagine what happened is a lot of our cases back in China, people are working in the city area, but the family is at the kampong area. They actually go back once in a year. In Malaysia, a lot of us working in Klang Valley, but we actually, you know, having family outside as well. So when we go back to home, chit chat, and imagine your parents saying like, hey, I received a gift from your company. Thank you. So that makes a very big difference on the feeling, right? So that's something that you can try practicing to do. The next thing you're talking about, for many of us, we are talking about, we want to make our life meaningful. So the life is not only the work. There are certain things that you can arrange to contribute back to the society. I've been seeing like during the MCO period, you see their orphan house, the old folks home, they're having trouble, right? Can you actually arrange your staff to actually go help them? I mean, having a basketball session with the orphan house can make a very big difference to the kids over there. All right. So comes to think about it, there's a bunch of things that you can work on for the employee engagement. The next thing we are talking about, how do we actually maximize the performance, right? Very straightforward. But there's a whole lot of things to do as well. It's not only individual KPI, but also how the organization need to change the SOP. Today, if you look at it, a lot of cases, HR needs to know more and more about the business. And you may need to actually assign one of your best manager to become your HR. The trend already started in the corporate world since like 10 years ago. It's like there are, from centralized HR operation, there are HR business partners in each and every business unit. You need to know the SOP operation, the people on the ground. Same things to the SME and small company now. HR should actually participate in the strategy discussion. All right. So whatever strategy we apply, we ultimately in a business, we are talking about the right person doing the right thing at the right time so that your strategy actually works. So think about it. How do we enable that? And a lot of people didn't realize, comparing to a big corporate, SME are very different. And in the sense that every size of SME, they are running a very different journey to grow. So if you only have 5 people in the SME, you are talking about having 5 heroes, all right? You cover this part, he covers this part, she covered that part, and we all gel very well. That's it. That's really how the 5 people size SME is operating. But when you grow until 15 people size, then you realize one hero doesn't make the big change as usual, right? So at that time, you need to start drafting the SOPs to make sure the operational wise, it move on and working correctly. And this SOP actually will change multiple times throughout the journey. When you go to 50 people's time, it change again. When you go to 100 people's time, 200 people's time, 2,000 people's time, it change again. So when you think about it, even COVID-19 era, even the MCO before MCO, currently in the MCO, post MCO, you need to change your SOP again, right? So that become one of your core things to do in the business operation or HR perspective. But a lot of SME did not realize that. Make sure you figure that out. So after 50 people size, then you talk about the cultural, because last time, you have the big boss trying to work very hard, drive everything. You have a few manager that's promoted from individual contributor that works very well, and then they become manager, they try to drive. But in the long term, it's not scalable. You really need to make sure everyone makes the right decision and right treatment to the customers, etc. As the same thing that the top line boss make the decision, right? So what's right, what's wrong, and you need to start building the cultural. Of course, after 100 people size, then you have more and more things. You talk about bureaucracy, you talk about redundancy, how to plan up redundancy, succession plannings, and so on. That's future, all right? But in the SME period, first thing first, think about all these things, all right? So when we talk about next 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, the performance review period is likelihood shortened, mainly due to our patience is also shortened. So if you have 1 year performance review period, it cut down to half a year, and then cut down to a quarter, monthly, and so on, right? So you need to kind of like redesign the approach. And it's the right time really for every SME to really think about what's the next 12 months period, and how do we change, how do we evaluate the organization structure and reorg accordingly. So, and then you reorg may not necessarily work at the very beginning. You need to review, refine, just like how you engineer a product. Okay, right? So that's very much what we are talking about, that we can actually work on the operation and talents to do a better job. So a lot of cases when we ask everyone, like, did we actually do enough of it? The most of the cases is like, no lah, right? How many of us actually say we actually did enough of work that make sure the employee engagement and performance is covered, right? And then when we say why, the answer is normally, I spend so much of time on this payroll, on whatever that leave form, claim form, and paperwork. That's exactly what happened. This is a picture that captured from one of our customers. Tons of paperwork, and if it goes wrong in the middle of anything, the operation is hugely affected. So actually, Kaki Tangan start from a leave application system. I'm not going to talk too much about the software side, but just briefly going through, people apply leave, submit claim on the phone. So I can apply leave, and then a manager receive an email saying, this person applied from when to when, what's the reason of applying leave, and how many days balance you still have, and during this period, who else going off for leave. So if you're still doing WhatsApp or paper leave form, please move forward. That's a tons of leave system today that you can choose from. Another thing is talking about payroll operations. You're talking about the calculation to online payroll, e-payslip, and e-form. So now you should really look into how you can actually run it on the cloud if you have not run it yet. A lot of people was telling us, joining the Kaki Tangan at until today, we are running somewhere around 2 billion ringgit payroll. So supporting a lot of banks. But a lot of people actually, when they speak to us after a few years, they're using Kaki Tangan, they said, Evan, I have all these digital transformation features. This is important, but in fact, I can actually get a software saving in my laptop. But the reason we are using it is really on the cloud. I say, why is that so? So they said, if my payroll data is stored in a laptop or a server or someone's hand, payroll outsourcer or so on, and what if tomorrow morning I open a laptop and it crashed, right? So my laptop can crash. My laptop may be gone missing. Someone took it. Ransomware, very common last 2 years. So one day you receive an email, accidentally double click on it, accidentally click on it, and that's it, right? SME for us, right? How many of us can actually afford to employ a top-notch security officer to cover all this thing? Very hard. So at the end of the day, if you think about it, payroll, accounting data, customer information, these are the most important data. But if I lost my accounting data, I can actually try to recover it back in a few weeks' time or even months before the auditor comes in, right? If you lost your payroll data, hey, what happened if you cannot issue payroll this month? So eventually that become a business continuity issue. Your whole business rely on the operation of one single laptop or one single person over there. That how can you actually solve it, right? So eventually, the cloud is actually becoming a business continuity in the digital transformation, and that's the reason why the government is forking out 500 million ringgit for SME to actually go to cloud. So Avocad again, thank you MDEC, thank you BSN's, SME banks and Malaysia MOF. This is important. Try to actually get engaged, and you can actually now apply the SME digital grant via email. So go ahead and apply before it runs out, right? So we talk about explain claim on the mobile phone, but actually a lot of people using it to actually generate an Excel of all the expense items they pass to auditors, as well as payment to the bank. And we also actually work with some lawyers to get some free HR documents templates available for download. Of course, if you need to work a more advanced version or get a consultation, we have a 20 years experience HR manager, ex-HR manager colleagues, Karen Sim at kakitangan.com. You can approach too. We are doing somewhere around 5,000 companies and 50,000 employees actively running in the system, normally 200 to 800 companies today. So that's where kakitangan.com is. I think I finished my session today. Some quick takeaways. If you are still doing manual process on the leave application, if you're still using Excel for payroll, you're having your payroll data on the desktop, there's no reason why you shouldn't change. You should actually change it today. Spend more of your time in two things. The most important thing, remember what I'm talking about. Number one, how do we make sure everyone is engaged in the company? Number two, how do we make sure our performance is growing? And then you leave the administrative tasks to the software. All right. Thank you very much. I'm actually finishing, and I'm happy to take the FAQ and or pass back to MC. Belly.
Thank you, Evan. Thank you so much. That was, I think, one of my favorites. I'm not going to be biased because there were so many great, clinic segments throughout the episodes as well. But this was really nice. You actually break it down into each segment and each portion, and everything was covered. So thank you so much. And to those who've been asking a question that, if you want to get the slides, yes, the slides will be sent to you if you're registered with Word Labs, and we will actually forward the slides from Evan and also Vu, which was the first segment, to you guys after the webinar completes. Now, there was a question that what I need to do if I wish to apply SME grant by adopting kakitangan.com.
Okay.
Yeah, how do one?
So it's pretty straightforward. There's actually a bunch of vendors certified by MDEC under the SME grant. So first you think about it. So likelihood if you do not have a HR and payroll system, that's an obvious choice to make a change. There are also accountings as well as the CRMs, the marketing solutions, and so on. Of course, most company after the GST, you already have your accounting sorted out. But these are the bunch of vendors you can actually apply for SME grant. So you can go to kakitangan.com, you play around with the system. So there's a trial period. There's also some models and our colleagues can help out. We could issue you an invoice. You take the invoice and apply the SME grant. So only approve, then we talk about the payment.
Thank you. Thank you, Evan. And I think I would like to wrap the SME Unplugged clinic and by just saying that, I'm sending you good vibes and positive vibes through this difficult times. And I hope you and your entire team and your families as well from kakitangan.com are all safe and sound at home. Thank you so much, Evan. And now, to those who logged in from Zoom, Facebook, you matter the most. As without you, this is just impossible. So thank you so much. You will receive a survey via email after the episode. So please be so kind to give us feedback. Don't mark it as read and delete because this plays a vital, important role during our review. So we can give you the best on our upcoming final episode. Now, before you leave, a very important reminder that if you want to know more details about the 100 Go Digital initiative, you could go into Facebook, find 100 Go Digital and join the group. You can get more updates as well over there. And I believe MDEC link of the SME Quick Wins has already been posted in the chat box. So you can actually get more knowledge and latest events for SMEs as well. And also some of the, the grant for the digitalization grant. You can also go and find out the details over there. Thank you so much, everybody. Now, the most important thing is next week, final episode. You see, I believe, we like to actually end it with a big bang. So next week's final episode, 2nd of June, Tuesday, we will be discussing on mitigation strategies, business continuity plans and ideas going forward by various industry leaders from Azlan Zainal Abidin from Celcom Axiata, Ezatol Paizura from TM1, Datuk Sri Dr. Azhari Yaakob from IJN, Nurul Afida Zulkifli from Mimpi Kita, Sarah Lian from Sapagood, and last but not least, Puan Sri Tiara Jacquelina from Infinity. So whoever do not know Tiara Jacquelina, I think she does not need any introduction. So 2nd of June, we will discuss on mitigation strategy. Now, till then, be safe. Stay safe. We will get through this together. Bali Dylan signing off from episode number 5, SME Unplugged, 100 Go Digital series brought to you by MDEC and Word Labs Business Network. Now, before you leave, I've already seen that there's a feedback link coming up. Please do not, do fill this up. Do not forget to fill it up. Simple feedback form. And after that, I would like to say thank you and see you next week. Bye-bye.